Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the V-Day Hour. I'm your host, as always, Victoria Dono, happy to introduce our guest today, Urooj Qureshi, who is the CEO of Design Center Co. and the founder of the Impactor app. But before we dive into more details like that, I would like to share that Urooj is a multiple time founder and has also enjoyed an international career in senior management roles in medium and large enterprises. Over the course of his vast career, he has contributed to transformation in multiple industries and delivered results at the intersection of design, technology, and social good. His professional experience culminates with the creation of the Impact Center Design Framework, or shortly called ICD framework, which he is often invited to speak about at leading organizations and global events. And if that was not enough, Urooj also plays an active role in the community, serving as a mentor, as a volunteer to international development and youth-oriented causes. He established the Impactor Award to provide financial incentive to budding entrepreneurs, basically supporting entrepreneurs in delivering their goals, but not forgetting about the society and tracking their efforts using the SDG indicators. So as mentioned at the beginning, Design Center Co. and founder of the Impactor app. We'll talk about it a little bit later, but it's basically a project collaboration solution that is transforming the way team works and deliver results. I will stop here, and I'm happy to give the floor to Urooj for welcoming remarks to our audience today. Hi, Urooj. Thank you for joining.
Hi, thank you. I really appreciate being here. Thank you for reaching out. It's always a pleasure to talk to people like yourself, like who are, you're tirelessly working to create inspiring and inspirational content. And I know this is something you do above and beyond your everything else that you're doing as well. So as an entrepreneur, I appreciate that. I see that in you, and I'm happy to encourage you and help support you in this journey.
Thank you so much. But today it's about you.
Sure. It's about all of us. It's always all about all of us. There's no I without you, right? So, and I think that's the most important message here. That no journey and no individual's journey is without the story of all the people we've encountered. So my story, yes, it is a story about me, but all of the things I do and I've done in the past, it's thanks to the people, kind people and generous people like yourself, who showed up at the right time at the right moment, and gave me that boost or gave me that encouragement or showed up to help in one way or the other. So that's what makes a success story. It's a series of people coming together, and that's, you talked about the community part. That's what my goal is as well, to be there for others and give back what I've received from many other leaders.
And this is why, ladies and gentlemen, we have him today, because he's not only is going to share us all his professional success and endeavors, but also he's a humble and amazing human being. Thank you for being with us today. But you know what? I want to literally start from the basics, from the beginning. So I want to know more about the young Urooj. Like, how was your childhood? How was it growing up? And do you have any favorite memory while growing up to share with everyone?
Yeah. So growing up, my dad was an airline executive, so it was not a typical childhood where, we were living 3 years in a place, or up until the house that I live in now. The longest I've lived in any house before this was 3 years at a time, and I was born and my dad was posted to North Africa. So we lived, my first 3 years were in North Africa. I'm originally from Pakistan, very proud to be. My grandparents were originally from India that migrated in 1947. And so I think that legacy of moving around and being a part of a global community is a part of who I am, as I see it and as I feel. And so, you asked about my favorite memory. I think the memory that stayed with me the strongest. I don't know if I should call it my favorite or something that had just a strong influence on me was with all of this traveling. Getting on a plane was very normal for us because that was my dad's job. So it was like, you get up and you go and you get on a plane. And so I was used to being on planes. But one day I was on a plane as a child. I think I might have been 7 or 8 years old. And we had recently learned the world map and the atlas. And we were, it's in class, we were diving into all of these countries and, what's the capital of which country, and, like other kids do in primary school. And so I was on a plane and I was looking down out of the window to see all these borders that we were learning about in geography or in this geography class, because that's
Yeah.
what I thought the world looked like. That if I looked outside the window of a plane, I would see all these boundaries and borders, but I couldn't see any. I kept looking for hours, and I couldn't see anything other than mountains and seas or oceans and rivers and all of that. And it struck me that that these boundaries are just kind of made up, right? Like I was confused a little bit, like where is this, why are we even studying all of these things if they don't even exist? And that's sort of formed the foundation of a lot of things and that happened later on in my life, where it's never about us and them. I have friends from around the world. I still do, from childhood to now. And I'm still confused about, like, why the world gets into so wrapped up in this conversation about who we are and who they are, and it's just all one place. The world doesn't see it differently.
I
So
see.
yeah. So I mean, I would say that's like, the childhood, was my childhood. The highlights were all the travel, and as a child, I didn't like all that travel because children like stability. I think in many regards, it's the adult that wants to go everywhere. Or as an adult, I've been like backpacking and I like to travel now. But as a kid, I just wanted a normal childhood, and it was a
Just be
very
on one place, or like stay on one place rather, or
Yeah, that's what I wanted back then as a kid, because I wanted more time with my cousins and my aunts and uncles, and our family was just always on the go. Like 3 years here, 3 years there, and even when we were in one place, we were traveling a lot because of my dad. And I was the eldest of three boys, so my mom would often ship one of us off, which was me, with my dad when he was going on business trips. So it would be like, okay, you have to take one of the boys, and I was the old eldest, so I would be the one who would end up traveling with my dad as well, and seeing even more.
wow. Okay, so you from early childhood you already exposed to multicultural environments and meeting people from all over the world, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's
All
how.
right. Well, it should be, yeah, because as you said, we are all one, we are all people, and we are all the same, and we shouldn't like go into other directions in that place. So okay, so that was childhood, a lot of travel, a lot of learnings from what I can see as well. Like already young you were contemplating about a lot of things, right? But then at some point in life you all moved to Canada, right? And I want to know, how was that process for you and your family, and how the integration process was for you personally, and how old were you, by the way, when that happened?
Yeah, yeah. So again, that was not a traditional story either. When I was in secondary school, we were in Pakistan at that time. I decided to quit school because I felt it was a waste of time. So I made a deal with my parents. I said, "Look, I'm going to go to university, but this is a waste of time over here. Like, I'm not learning anything. So I'm going to quit school. I'm going to study on my own. I'm going to go work because I had this opportunity to do an internship. I used to do portraiture back then. I used to enjoy doing portraiture, and I had an engineering brain at that time. So I used to open up computers. I used to take apart things and put them back together. And
Uh-huh.
so when I was 14, almost turning 15, I quit school. I studied on my own. I went and did my internship at a design house and helped build Pakistan's first 3D arcade game. And I wrote entrance exams to universities. I had a scholarship at the University of New South Wales, but at that time I decided I wanted to go to North America because I wanted to work as an engineer in the automotive sector, and
I I
That was the
see.
place to go. Detroit was the place to go, so that's where I wanted to go. And I wrote my entrance exams, and I got accepted in Detroit at a university. And so I went there when I was around 17, so I was underage still, uh,
Mm-hmm.
but I got admitted, and that's what happened. And around that time, unfortunately, 9/11 happened. This was around the time when the terrorist attack happened on the Twin Towers, and a
Yeah.
lot of things changed about the U.S. And so, being a Pakistani citizen at that time, things got weird. I used to really enjoy traveling to the U.S. when I was a kid growing up, but after that, it was not the same, and to some extent, understandable. In many other ways, it was just stupid, in my opinion. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why I moved to Canada. So
I
I kind of
see.
yeah. So there was not like we didn't my family didn't migrate to Canada. I went to Canada kind of by coincidence as a result of global events happening and shaping my experience. Um, and
Being a
yes,
global citizen is your thing, apparently, right?
it seems to be. It seems to be the thing. So yeah, that's how I ended up in Canada, and I simply transferred my credits from Michigan to the University of Ottawa, and that's where pretty much that's where I've been ever since. The rest of my family did come, but it was my brother who's just younger than me, Saad, who actually works with me now as well. And then when my youngest brother decided that he wants to join us, my parents figured, well, what are they going to do anywhere else in the world if all of the kids are in Canada? So in that way, I ended up influencing the whole family to move to Canada. But it was not a typical move where some people want to change the way where they live and change the opportunities that they have or gain different opportunities. I was simply pursuing something I wanted to do, which was to become an engineer and an automotive engineer. And as things evolved, I adapted to those situations and found a really nice community here. I mean, I'm going to be the first person to criticize Canada, and I've lived here long enough to have earned the right to do so. Things are not perfect here. They're
Mhm.
not. We have many, many issues. And that said, I found a really nice community here. For one, it is a community of very diverse community with people from just about anywhere in the world. Sometimes you can find better ethnic food here more easily than you can in the country of its origin.
Right.
So that's something I like about Canada. It's a global village, or as we like to call it. If the U.S. is a melting pot, Canada is a tossed salad, where everyone can maintain a certain element of their individuality of where they come
Yes.
from, and not become just this one broth that is a mixture of everything.
So I should trust you because you're an engineer, right?
Well, I mean, this was more of a chef or culinary reference. So
So
yeah,
you're a global citizen and also family influencer. Okay, got it.
seems like
So okay, so you have this, technical brain, and you were always into mechanical engineering from what you're saying. But was there something that you didn't like while studying at university? Was like just kind of out of curiosity.
like
Dislike you didn't like.
dislike. Oh, many things. I disliked many things about university. Um, well, there's I like to be sometimes a specialist, so I like studying or doing the things that I like to do, which is
Mhm.
going to be another theme you're going to notice. And then there's all this noise for my brain. It's just noise. So I don't know how university life is in Europe, but in North America, whatever you go to study, so whether it's engineering or chemistry or whatever arts, you have to do certain amount of courses that are not related to your field. I
Yes,
think
we have the same. Yeah.
same, right? So I understand the value of it now. in hindsight. But at that time, it was just a lot of noise. Like, why do I have to do all of this other stuff? I'm only here for this thing, right? So why is all of this relevant to me? So that was one challenge. But it was a good thing I did all of those things, because when I went to university, I ended up in the entrepreneurship program. I never thought. I mean, even when I started my first business, for the longest time, I didn't think of myself as an entrepreneur. I still, for the most part, don't. I think of myself as a subject matter expert, who seems to be good at bringing people together, and that's how the company starts. But yeah, that was one thing. Like, doing all these courses, which ended up helping me. I was also so the thing that often we dislike or feel discomfort around often becomes our strength. So when I went to university, there was a lot of things that I felt weren't fair, and for students, especially international students, people who, like myself, who came from another country, there were things that local students could do that international students couldn't do, which created a disbalance of opportunities. And so I became an advocate for student rights and to fight for the rights of those students, and because it affected me, especially also because it affected me and others. And in the first year I was of university, I was actually doing diversity training for the registrar's office here. And it's really funny because I think it was a week ago, I was last week or the week before, I was actually back at the university in the board of directors, like sitting with the directors of the university, because of the work that we do now and the company that I have right now. And I told them the story because most of them had been at that board table for maximum. I think the longest someone had around that table had served in the university was 5 years. And I asked them all at the beginning, how long have you been here? 5 years. And I said, okay, cool. I've preceded all of you. I've been at this table way longer than any one of you have, because I was fighting for the rights of students and trying to improve student life here. And at this board table, 20 years before, or more than 20 years before at this point. And so what I disliked was this balance of opportunities for different students. And again, going back to my childhood, I don't see those differences. I could never find the borders on the actual planet. So I became an advocate, and actually that's what got me involved in community and helped me see the value in a very tangible way for the first time in my life as a teenager, that how important giving back is, how important it is to speak up. And when you see injustice, not just injustice to yourself, but injustice for anyone. And really my first startup was on campus as a result, because to do all this advocacy work, we had to form some kind of an association or organization. And a really good friend of mine at that time, his name was Richard. He was a PhD student from India. Him and I said, okay, well, we need to give some structure because we need a platform to be able to make this change.
Yeah.
Founded an association, a not-for-profit organization. And my goal was simply to do the advocacy work and step back and someone else to run this thing. But when we formed the association, somehow on the night of when we were electing everyone elected me as the president. And I'm like, how did that happen? Like, this was not the plan. Richard was supposed to be the president, not me. And that's how it happened. So that's how so looking back, I guess that was my first startup, where I helped found an organization and then led it for a couple of years, which was completely community oriented. And I think this whole idea of being true and honest to a cause, that's what led to all of that development. And again, it's helped me in so many ways in life since then, in terms of building a community, building a network, starting my for-profit business right out of university as well. It was all the connections and the work that we did in this association that contributed to this, overnight success, as we call it.
And is that association still there, functional?
To be honest, I don't know, because it was a student organization. I know a lot of the things, and so we talked about this at this board meeting at the university. A lot of the programs that the university runs are programs that are student oriented, especially that are oriented towards students that come from outside of Ottawa.
Mm-hmm.
Are programs that we help start.
Yeah.
So we created this program, for example, to pick up students at the airport and help them get settled on campus, because you don't know where you're going when you first land.
And you're like, you don't know where to do, where to look for sure.
Yeah. So we started that program without any budget, without any funding back then, believe it or not. We just went and partnered with another university that had budget. And it took one of the executives of the university back then to show up at the airport and say, because we had handmade banners and things like that to welcome students. And they were like, and the other university, the competitor university, had everything printed and nice. And so this VP got really upset why his university was being represented that way. We were like, well, give us money and we will represent
Yeah.
you. And that's what eventually happened. And now today the university offers a pickup program at all bus stations, train stations, and at the airport. There was another issue back then where international students couldn't participate in what's called co-op. It's a program where students can work and study. So the university places the students as a part of the program. And back then, international students weren't allowed to participate in that program. And today they do, because we fought for it back then, or we represented and we did the awareness around how that benefits the university and how that benefits Ottawa and the community when international students can actually participate. So so all of those programs still exist. I don't know whether or not the students have carried on, because I'm talking about 23 years ago. So it's been a while.
Wow. So, you have an idea, you take an action out of it, if people are just drawn into you and it just flows, right? So it was just meant to be. So thanks for thanks for actually helping yourself and those around you back then. And,
Yeah.
now it's basically ongoing. Oh, that's so cool.
Well, to
Super
be honest, back
Yeah.
then I didn't get the benefit because advocacy often takes a while. I mean, the airport pickup program,
Right.
I was already settled at that time. The co-op program, it didn't happen until I left. There was other things as well, which we changed the constitution of the university or the local bodies on campus, but those processes take a while, and so I'm happy that those changed. But at that time, they didn't help me. It was just the work that for me, and then I'm glad that the future
You put
generation
the stone, you put the founding
put the
stone.
foundation, and we got the ball rolling, and then people ran with it.
And then it went further. Yeah, well, excellent, amazing. So as you already have noticed, and you already very well known, you have the entrepreneurial spirit from early age, right? And your first company, if I'm not mistaken, Alternative Media Solutions and Technology, you founded in 2004, right?
Correct.
So you as an entrepreneur are probably always feeling doing that in your life. How was it for you to actually see that a reality for a young ambitious guy to see this baby coming to life?
Well, first of all, there was no young ambitious guy. I mean, there was a young guy, fortunately, but there was no ambitious guy. There was an opportunist. It was not out of uh, objective that, I mean, I didn't imagine like I would, you know, start a company or anything like that. I had no ambitions like
Oh,
that.
really? Okay.
Yeah, no, 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 nothing like that. I've never started
Mhm.
a company because like I wanted to start a company. Companies have formed around me because I'm trying to solve some problem or the other, and eventually it gets to a point where I'm like, okay, we need to formalize this. Um,
Mhm.
and that's how AMST, or Alternative Media Solutions, started as well. Because of all my advocacy work, I couldn't work on campus. I was also working for the university at one point, when I was a student, so I couldn't work for the university anymore. And I was still an international student at that time, so not many options. So I went and spoke with some people in the community. People in the community at that point knew me, especially around our campus area. And one of the businesses said, "Hey, would you be interested in doing some branding work for us?" And this was when Web 2.0 was just starting. So it was after the .com crash, and Web
Mhm.
2.0 and all was emerging. And I happened to have an engineering brain plus a design brain, so I said yes, and did the first branding job. I was not thinking this was going to turn into a business or anything like that at that time.
Okay.
And then the second contract came, and because they referred me to this first client, referred me to the second client, And it kind of kept going like that until there was an opportunity with McAfee Antivirus, which was like the big company, and there was a local company that was getting merged with McAfee or was getting bought out. And at that point, I started needing more people to help me with this this little thing I was doing around design and websites.
Mhm.
Um, this was also a time, and I was speaking at an event last week where I was talking about how it all started. Back then, there was no we weren't emailing people because a lot of people weren't on email, especially in small business. You had to pick up the phone and call people and get sales. That's how we got sales. Like you call, you had a yellow book, a yellow
Yeah.
pages book, and you could look up anyone's phone number in this yellow pages book. There was no quick Google thing. There was no internet scraping. It was like page by page, dial by dial, and that's how we.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
so at that so this is going back at that time. So I needed more people to help me with these contracts, and that's when I started hiring people. And my first business, AMST, transformed into the second business, which was Dakima, which was far more successful than AMST was. Simply because AMSC, I never thought of myself as a business. I never thought that I was going to build a business or grow a business. I thought I'm going to do this thing, and potentially I'm just going to go get a job like everyone else.
Okay.
But eventually the next problem kind of emerged, which was at this point in AMST there was two other guys that were involved. One guy was Black Haitian guy, and the other one was this guy, Canadian guy, Jewish ancestry. His grandparents had migrated
Mhm.
from Europe during World War II or something like that. So very diverse and mixed as well. And the three of us were watching TV one day, and we saw this Ford commercial with very white traditional, what we call white Anglo-Saxon community in Canada, represented in the video. And we looked at each other at this moment, and I think we all had this aha moment where we're like, this commercial does not represent us, and we are the people who should be buying these cars. So what's
Mhm.
wrong with the situation? And then we realized that at that point, Canada was just beginning to awaken to the fact that Canada was a lot more diverse and in identity and culture and tradition and even in its DNA now than it had been for its history, its previous 140 years of history.
Mhm.
And so we said we have to do something. We're already in design and technology. We're already working in marketing. And so we formed what became Ottawa's first intercultural marketing communication agency, and we were the third. It turned out we were the third in Canada. The only other two agencies that were focusing on diverse communities consciously were, one was in Vancouver, which is a really, really big city, and the other one was in Toronto, which is the largest city in Canada. And so there, people saw that need before us, but then we were the first to be focusing on intercultural marketing communications in Ottawa, and became the third. And that's when things really grew, because we kind of found discovered what we were doing, and what we call product market fit. And then we had accounts at one point with large American brands, and we were subcontracting with other larger agencies as well. And so that business, that was the first time I really felt like I was an entrepreneur, because I felt that, okay, now we really started something that we need to grow, because there was a strong mission behind it from a commercial point and a commercial perspective to it. The association at Ottawa U, again, I never thought of it as a startup. It just happened. I see it in hindsight. That was the beginning of my entrepreneurship journey. AMST was, again, something to keep me busy with while I couldn't have access other opportunities. But Dakima was a business, and it's really when I started realizing this is who I am. This is something I do. And I ran that. I think it was like 5 or 6 years until I was completely burnt out, and
Okay.
and exited that business and took a year off to travel. And that's when I worked for some multinational companies and became an executive with all this experience I had.
As
And
a freelancer or?
no. So at first, I just didn't want to do anything. So I sold
You
everything.
needed some time off. Come
I
on.
needed some time off. I sold everything, and packed my life in a backpack, and
Wow.
left. and left Canada. Well, first went to the east coast of Canada and then left Canada. After 2 weeks, I said, okay, this is enough. And at that time, I had a good life. I mean, to be honest, like I was living in my dream house, and I was like, everything was great. But I
Right.
got rid of everything. I had to move on and close that chapter in life. And I went and walked the Camino de Santiago. So that was one of the first things I did. I went and reconnected with my best friend in Switzerland, and then I went and walked the Camino de Santiago. Um, and from there went traveled down to Portugal, then to Africa, came back to Romania. This is when I met someone from Romania who I married in the following year, um, and then got involved in the community again. So first in Romania, and then flew down to East Africa and volunteered for a couple of charities there in Uganda and in Kenya, which inspired me to start a program in education with youth with low income families who I mean the idea is that no matter where you live, parents want to see their kids succeed, and everyone imagines the picture of success to be engineer, doctor, lawyer, right, white collar people,
Right.
professions. But the reality is, many people who live in low income family situations, they're not going to be able to achieve that because it takes generations to break the cycle of poverty. And the model I saw in Africa with these two charities that I volunteered with, it inspired me to create a vocational training program alongside traditional education. And so I went to Pakistan. I had to go to Pakistan at that time anyways, and I decided to stay in Pakistan and start what's called the Lotus Project. And it was a program where we introduced. So Beacon School is a term we use for schools in low income communities. So we created a curriculum to introduce vocational training where kids could learn hands-on skills like plumbing, electrical work, carpentry, things like this that they can use to support their families, to create opportunities for their family, and with the idea that so this is alongside literacy. This was not a substitute for literacy. This is
Yeah.
in addition to literacy, these hands-on skills which they can use to maybe start a carpentry shop or become an apprentice, and by earning a living in a respectable, honest way, they can help bring income that will break the cycle of poverty. Because the
Right.
alternative for these kids often is begging on the street, or like just very little opportunity. With just literacy, no one's going to offer them a job in an office. They're going to be at best serving someone else, right, like as a
Yeah.
peon. But this way they can take control of their destiny. They learn all the skills in school that they need to learn, plus a really valuable skill, whatever they're attracted to, and then they build from there. And so we started a pilot project with 1,000 kids in Karachi, and the program's still running. We housed it within OSDI, which is a larger NGO, which helped us get started with the pilot project. And now OSDI continues to run this program, and there's a number of schools that have adopted that program there in the Beacon School, where there's like Beacon schools.
You definitely went ahead of it. So I'll actually just go a little bit behind. Definitely coming back to this community
Sure.
service because it's super super interesting. So when exactly did you feel that it's time to leave, let's say, this business world, and when did you feel like I've had enough, and I need to take care of my, I don't know, mental health, for example, and weren't you able to put some boundaries in order to kind of maintain that environment so that you can go on? I'm just kind of curious, what was going on inside of you?
Yeah, I mean, this it all seems very clear in hindsight, but when you're in it,
Correct.
this is not like that. So there is no logic. Uh, I um, I had been working with the mental health community at that time as well as a contributor. Anyways, there's another story there, like about starting a mental health campaign for Canada, but
Wow.
I didn't realize it was affecting me. I just knew I was really, really tired. And my schedule back then was insane. I used to have board meetings I was on a number of different boards for different organizations. So my days used to start somewhere around, with meetings at 7 o'clock in the morning, and they would end at midnight. And so they were, with all the socializing in between at the end. This is what agency life often is like for many people. And most people are running on fumes, but you get that one hit, whatever that hit is for some people, whether it's a sale or a successful campaign or whatever, it keeps you going and you don't realize. So I was in a vicious cycle at that time,
Mm-hmm.
um, until I hit this point where everything became meaningless. And that's when I realized that was it. I didn't put any, like, the words that you use, mental health and knowing. I mean, I knew it was burnout afterwards, after I left. I didn't know I was burnout in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I just knew I had to stop what I was doing because I could not. Like, I was shutting down physically and mentally, and there was a lot of apathy at that point where I stopped caring. And whenever I stop caring, I know that's a sign to move on. It's just not worth it. And this is my message to everyone as well. Like, if you feel like it's not worth it, whatever you're doing, it's time to move. That's a sign you need to move. We need to move on. And so I've always kind of done that. If I can't find meaning, then there's always opportunities that are more meaningful. And that's what happened. It took me leaving to realize what it was, that it was burnout. But in that moment, I just stopped caring, and that's why I had to stop.
And if the current Urooj will go back into that old Urooj, what advice would you give to yourself?
Honestly, I wouldn't change a thing about any of that experience,
Okay.
because without all the things that happen, I wouldn't have the knowledge or experience that I do today.
Mhm.
So I regret none of it. I mean, yes, things could have gone differently. I also skipped over the part where I made really bad decisions and lost everything I had at one point. But that was like years before that. This point where I left in a privileged position, but I had also gone through this experience where I lost everything because of some bad business decisions I made, and I wouldn't change a thing about that either, because I call that experience my MBA. I call leaving and exiting Dakima as my graduation into self awareness, and there's been many other milestones along the way. So for me, those are all important milestones. I would let Aruj do exactly what he did, because he was way more stubborn than I am, and he would just go wherever. Like, I'm a father and all of these things, and so, like, I have to think about consequences for my family. But back then, none of that mattered, and I think I lived a really good life. I lived all of those experiences at the best time possible, when I could afford to lose everything, when I could afford to make mistakes, and I got it out of my system. So my advice to Uruj back then would be, just do whatever you're doing. You're on the right track. You'll figure it out eventually.
Okay, so whatever comes our way, we should just embrace, and but also stop when you feel it's unbearable, right? To proceed. And
Yeah, knowing your own limits is important, for sure. And I think those were placed there from my parents. I think, like, a lot of those things came from the childhood, knowing when to stop, but also being, you know, devoted or committed to an idea, is and finding meaning. As long as you find meaning in it, that's really important too. It's a
Mhm.
balance. It's a fine balance.
It's about everything in life, right? To find that balance.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so I was curious about that, and of course, the journey that you embarked on also changed your life in a very good way, because you also started serving communities, and you also I believe, and I'm positive that you also learn more about yourself as a human, and what you bring to the world. So, from all because you mentioned so many projects, and I'll definitely would also like to know what would be your own, let's say, most favorite, and why was it impactful for you. But what would be, let's say, what would be the biggest impact from let's say, that gap year, or how long did you take in order to, travel the world and create all these wonderful things for the communities around the world?
Well, I think one was just the lesson in slowing down and the value of slowing down, because as I said, like I quit secondary school. I went to work. I went to university. Got into advocacy. I went to, da 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 da. Like, it was like just go 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 at that time. And when you're a teenager and then you're in your 20s, we have a lot of energy. So I think it's good,
Right.
it's to do all of that. But then we hit a certain point where it's good to learn the value of slowing down as well, and being more strategic. I think I like to play soccer or football,
Yeah.
and when I was in my 20s, so football is a good analogy for my life. The way I play football is a good analogy for my life. When I was younger, my whole game was running after the ball. So I was like the guy who would just chase the ball and wouldn't see obstacles and just get through. That was my football game. Now, and this reflects in overall life as well, I'm more strategic with the ball when I play football. I know I don't want to get hit in my knees anymore. I know I don't want to get hit in my ankles anymore. So I'll pay more attention to the whole field, and I'll figure out, like, okay, when I should get the ball and who I'm passing it to. And there's a lot of value in that, because at this stage I'm thinking about growing and accelerating the things that the base I've built with Design Centered and with Impactor and what we're doing. Same thing with and on family life. I'm more strategic because I'm thinking about my daughter and her future, and how we're going to invest this time together to build our relationship, but also how to set her up with academics and in her life as well. So I have a different perspective in all realms of my life, which again is reflected in my soccer game now. The way I play soccer now is exactly the same way, and I see the value. I see the value of what that guy on the field, the younger version of me, who would chase the ball and take the ball all the way through. But now I also see the value in slowing down, and that comes from that year of backpacking. That I took my life so seriously. Like, if I pulled myself out of the equation, everything's going to fall apart. No, everything continues. You can take yourself out of the equation, and everything continues. The world is a big place, and there's many people who can pick up the ball,
Yeah.
and it's all going to be great. And it'll be good for us as well. So that was one, slowing down. The other thing, which I think is really, really important as a message in everything that's happening in the world right now, with all the wars and all the conflicts that are happening, one thing I saw was that, no matter what the media tells us, in spite of everything that is happening, the world is a good place, full of a majority of really nice people, really kind and generous and humble people who are there to help everyone out, even a stranger. You can show up at someone's door, and there's a good chance anywhere in the world that people will support you and will help you some way, whatever way they can. So there's a small part of the world, or there's a small minority of people who are maybe evil, and that's
Yeah.
true. But even they, like, there's a reason why maybe they're evil. I like to be an optimist, but 90% of the world is out there to help each one of us, and that's what I saw. And I met people who went out of their way. Like, I was a complete stranger, and I used to stay when I was on the backpacking portion of my trip. I used to stay usually 2-3 days in a city, so no one would get to know me really well or anything.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, like, I still have phone numbers of people that I can pick up the phone and call from back then, and I met them once, and they went out of their way to show me around, to invite me for dinner, take me out for lunch, or whatever it was, and I had a blast. And that was what my travel was about. It was not to do sightseeing. I had done a lot of sightseeing growing up. Again, like I
Mhm.
said, I
Yeah.
published, so it was more about slowing down, and I had to move away from the pattern that I was in. And I met people, and those people were like, that experience reminded me of all the goodness that there is in the world, and still reminds me when I read the news.
I actually feel sometimes that this is a skill to actually see the good in the world. So, what would you recommend people? How can they learn to see the good? Is that actually something you learn, or is it something that you just have?
I think that's a very complicated question, because there's no one answer. And this is something I tell people, that the answer to some of these questions is going to be personal to each person. I have no right to judge anyone's mindset or intention, because everyone's had different opportunities growing up and in life. I'm fortunate to have had the journey I've had, and I learned to see things more as an optimist than a pessimist. That doesn't mean I don't sometimes I can also be a pessimist as well at times, but overall my theme is to be more optimist. Now, if someone feels that they're a pessimist or they don't see things in a positive way, and they feel that they want to do something about it, then one thing I could recommend is meditation. Uh, because it all starts with us. The second thing is go find a way to serve others. But the first thing is to find a way to serve yourself, like to find our own balance within inside. And so meditation is not this complicated thing that, media would or pop culture would make us believe. Meditation can be in walking. And I don't believe that, when we meditate, that our mind should be empty. Actually, it's not how meditation works. Even if you like, I've been meditating for more than a decade, and I often have thoughts because we as humans, we've evolved to have these thoughts in our mind. It's not about the thoughts, it's about finding stillness in those thoughts, even when those thoughts are there, to say, yes, I acknowledge this thought that has come up. I can, I have a very important meeting in 15 minutes from now. I acknowledge that I feel tense about this, and I allow myself or give myself permission to enjoy this moment for myself. And that's the essence of meditation, regardless of what else is happening, whatever's happening, whatever emotions come up, they're normal and they're natural to us. So embrace that. And just this act of meditation in this form creates empathy towards ourselves. So when we are empathetic towards ourselves, and it's a journey, it's not going to happen overnight. It may take weeks or years or decades for any individual to get to where they need to be. We can start giving out that, sharing that, and then the second thing is giving back, finding ways to volunteer in whatever way. It doesn't matter. It could be, if you're in business, you could volunteer at a business association. Maybe that's the starting point. If you could go, or making a meal for your neighbor, whether you're in an apartment or in a house, making cookies for your neighbor and bringing them. That's an act of volunteering and an act of generosity as well. And it sounds like something very simple and small, but I think just like starting there, that's what starts creating the shift in the mind from being, if someone feels they're a pessimist, to an optimist, because there will be a reaction we will receive from our body, if it's meditation, from our body, from our mind, or if from our neighbor or from our business association. People will recognize that, and that recognition will start changing the way our brains are wired, and the patterns start shifting. So it's not that complicated. It takes that first step.
Take the first step and see what happens.
See what
And
happens.
you'll never know until you try.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a great message. Let's go back to the community service. One, because we can talk so much about all of the wonderful things that you did, but is there one in particular project that is really close to your heart that you would like to share?
Community, like not-for-profit, like NGO stuff?
You were mentioning about, in Pakistan,
Karachi?
the vocational school, right? That the program that you have created. Is there anything, I don't know, is that your most favorite project you did, or there's any some?
It is my favorite project. I mean, this is not to say the others weren't meaningful.
Clearly, for sure.
But why the Lotus Project was so meaningful was because it's about our future generation. You talked about like youth mentoring, and whether it's the Impactor Award with young entrepreneurs, including SDGs as a part of their success metrics, or anything else. I feel when, as adults, as professionals, we stand on the shoulders of giants, as the expression goes. Yeah. And so I've achieved a lot. And so where the way I see it, where I can create the greatest impact is to offer that service to the youngest in our community, because not everyone has the idyllic childhood, and not everyone has the idyllic household. and we will never know what happens behind closed doors in anywhere, in any place. And even people who have idyllic childhood, they might not be seeing it that way. So working with youth by creating opportunities and dialogue that influence youth and the way they think, I think we can solve all of the world's problems. Imagine, like, all these young people growing up to being influenced by becoming, just being community oriented, by knowing that they were supported, or there's a community around them that cares, that can change the world. And so for me, the Lotus Project was really, really meaningful. One, also because I'm originally from Pakistan, I identify with that, and I know there's a very, very huge need for this kind of support there. So that's why it was really, really meaningful. But then more importantly was youth. And again, the youth theme will continue in the more I talk about things, because it's like, if we can empower our kids, then we can change the future.
And was it implemented only in one school, or it's a nationwide program?
Well, it's a regional program, as far as I know at this point,
Mhm.
in the province of Sindh, which is the southern one of the southern provinces in Pakistan. It started in Karachi, and then I kind of placed it back into a larger organization that had resources, and
Mhm. Mhm.
because it's not about owning any of these things; it's about starting something and getting the ball rolling and empowering others to lead.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And actually, besides your diverse journey, let's put it like that, you are also a writer for BBC Travel. Was that related to your community service work, or was that already happening when you were managing the agencies, the companies, and
No, no, that happened as a result of my backpacking trip. I mean,
that's what I
again,
thought.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So it was, again, nothing that not ambition. Again, it was event.
It just
Uh,
came to you.
it just came. I think if you set your mind towards something. So I had started a
Yeah.
blog when I left, and it was mostly for my parents to feel comfortable. And I, every couple of days I would post something on my blog, or at least a couple of times a week. And that's that was the reason why I was doing it, mostly for my family, so they could follow. And Facebook was pretty popular at that time, but I didn't want to post things on Facebook alone.
Okay.
I wanted to have a medium where I could just share with people. And at one point in time, BBC had this Travel Pioneers program, and they were looking for travel pioneers at that time, because travel was really big at that time. It still is, but there was a shift happening in that sector.
Mm-hmm.
And so they created a community nomination program. And because I had been traveling around the world, I had a blog, I had some following at that time.
Okay.
And then I was doing all this community work. I guess people were kind enough to vote, and they saw me in that position of being a BBC travel pioneer. And that's how that happened. BBC followed up. Like, I guess I got the votes, and they followed up, and they asked me to write that first story, which was about leaving everything, leaving being a social entrepreneur to travel article, which is on BBC, and then after that, I wrote a few more for them until I got
Mm-hmm.
busy again, and I couldn't. I didn't have. I ran out of time to. I
I see.
again had no more time to write, and but I wrote for the BBC. I did some stuff for the New York Times Post. I never New York Times something. Well,
So you
usually,
kindly excuse yourself, yeah, from that,
pardon?
right? You kindly excuse yourself that you don't have time.
Yeah, well, also, it was not a part of the mandate of what
See.
BBC wants at the moment, because I'm in a different. I switched phases. I got back into business,
Yeah, yeah.
um, and I was not the travel pioneer. I was in a different phase now. Just like I was a social entrepreneur, then I was a travel pioneer, then I was back in business.
So basically, from that, community work and then backpacking, being back to the business world, did that felt weird? Did that felt good? How did it feel?
Um, Look, I mean, it was life happening, and I just say yes to life happening. It was. What happened? So my wife then was pregnant, so my daughter was going to be born. I needed to switch gears to bring a focus back to sort of home and stability. for my daughter, and that's kind of how I got back into it. That's how I created the intent, and once the intent is there, the plan follows. So I ended up working for Colt, which is a big telco, just at the right time when they were going through a major digital transformation. I led their design practice. I got involved again through my network because I put out an intention, and through my network, I got the position to lead the design practice. Implemented this design practice across 22 countries, which was fantastic. And wanted to come back to Canada at the end of this process, and ran into a couple of startup founders in Romania, also in Romania, who eventually we came to an agreement that was really good, and it was really aligned. It was aligned with my values and what I wanted to do at that time. So I said yes to that, and we ended up helping. I ended up helping raise like one of the largest Series A rounds of investment in Eastern Europe at that time. So the message here is like intention is important, and it was not weird because that's what I wanted to do at that time. I had a reason to do it. Again, there was a purpose for what I wanted to do, and I pursued that. And since then, it's been a series of like startups and all in different areas that I've been really interested in making a difference. So you mentioned I've been involved in a different transformations in different sectors. These are all areas that, in one way or the other, I felt there was ways we can contribute. So when my daughter was born, one of the shifts that happened was, and my brother sums it up in the best way possible. He said that, when I work in not for profits, I don't make any money. When I work for profits, I don't make enough of an impact. So I have to find a way in between, and that's the way in between is basically what it is. It's like it's social entrepreneurship. I approach traditional business environments, as you know, and this is how we met as well, in disruptive ways, and I bring disruptive ideas to those traditional business environments, to shake things up and see what I can make of that. Right, I come from an engineering and design background, but then a social entrepreneurship background as well. So it's combining all of these three things that creates transformations that are human oriented, not human and impact oriented, not just change digitization for the sake of digitization. We did digitization for the sake of digitization when I was leading the Web 2.0 wave.
Yeah.
And right now, like all of the things that have bothered me, like they come together. So whether it was cybersecurity, whether it was uh, transformations in government. Right now, what we're working on is inclusion and alignment within the organizations. So this is what Impactor App does. This is the startup that I'm working on now, in addition to our agency that's been doing really well. We Through the work that we were doing, we realized there's a lot of people going to work who are not happy at work. They've got amazing jobs. They get paid really well. They've got good environments. They've got good colleagues, but there's something that's not working in these environments. And to me, that bothers me. It bothers me that there are people, they're very smart, talented individuals that are not seeing their full potential in these amazing places where they work, where they can make an immense contribution to society. And so we created Impactor App as a solution, as a platform, as a SaaS software, but as a platform to talk about inclusion and alignment. So that way we can change cultures within these corporate environments. So that way there's more inclusion and engagement with employees. So that way these talented people can bring their ideas forward and help these large organizations create impact. Well, large or small, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But that's a response to the disenfranchisement, or like this disconnect that's happening within corporate environments. And there's many, right? So I'm not going to name any one of them, but I think many people who are going to be watching this will relate to that, because everyone I speak to, whether it's leadership or whether it's operations, people, that message resonates with people, and that's one of the reasons why I speak at these events and talk about impact centered design and impactor at different organizations. because one, people need someone to bring that message to or those organizations, and then we with Impactor we can create some tangible shifts within those organizations.
Tell me, do you have some data on how Impactor is affecting organization and how that increases productivity?
So it's still at an early stage. We're still at an early stage. There's a few metrics we've been tracking. One that I can confidently talk about because it's something that we've done in a repeated way. So it's not around inclusion, but just the speed of decision making. Because one of the challenges that we see in these enterprises is this decision log, right? And by log, I don't mean a record. I mean a log, something jamming the process from moving forward. And that's what happens. Like a lot of decisions come together and then they get jammed and no transformation happens. So one of the metrics we've been tracking is time from idea to decision. It was part of our early hypotheses. And so what we've been able to repeat is a reduction by 80% in the time it would take from an organization or a team to go from an ideation to decision making. And so that's one thing we've seen repeatedly, that it cuts down the time to decision. There's other things we're tracking and we're going to be tracking, which is going to be around inclusion, because part of the long-term vision is to have an ethical use case of AI, where AI can actually guide individuals, these companies or leaders or managers, make better decisions when they're including teams. So like if you bring together a certain group of people in certain kinds of roles, Impactor would indicate, well, based on the ways your projects have gone in the past, with this composition of people, looks like you're not going to be very successful if it's all leaders there, right? Or if it's like when you have a multidisciplinary team making the decisions that you can see through from vision to implementation, it starts showing an upward trend, saying, great, you're on the right track, keep going. Now what metrics, what KPIs are you going to measure? And it helps you choose KPIs and all that. But that's a longer term vision. For now, there's fewer things, but we haven't quite quantified yet the inclusion piece. But what we're seeing, I can say it anecdotally, because as an engineer, until I have stats, I won't tell you that this is definitive, but I can tell you anecdotally. What we're seeing is a lot of aha moments where people think they're going to make a certain decision, but then when they create inclusion, they bring their team in, and then they see the direction that the decision needs to go in. They're like, oh,
all right.
And then now they can build projects around motivated individuals, which is really, really important for transformations, well, for anything we do, but in these environments, and when people feel included, they feel happier, they feel vested in the mission or the purpose of the project. They can build more healthier dialogue with their colleagues and coworkers, because they feel there's an equity. I won't use the word equality because I think it's more charged than equity, but we need equitable workplaces, and that comes with inclusion, that comes with alignment, that comes from the satisfaction of having delivered something meaningful through our jobs, and not the fact that we went to work from 9 to 5 or whatever it was.
So this is where we are combining, right? You're bringing value to the organization, but you're also impacting it in a way. So you have this combination, which I guess makes you happy as a solution, that you provide to your clients and to organizations, right? So.
Well, as an individual as well. I mean, this was
as well.
As an individual, I want to see. So, like, if people have asked, like my team has asked me, so why are we doing this from your perspective, right?
Right.
So many different things. There's many opportunities out there, and just like I said with youth, like if we can shape the minds of our youth in a way and orient them in a way that they think about the well-being of others, they think about, and they feel supported. It's the same thing with professionals. Imagine, I can sit there and complain all about big multinational corporations, how they're destroying the world, right? Like so many people are. Yeah. I can easily sit and do that, or I can try and be a part of the solution. And I see a lot of value in these big multinational organizations as a force of good. It's no one. I know a lot of people in these environments, many of them are friends, many people I've grown up with, many people who've gone from the not-for-profit sector in those sectors, and they
Mm-hmm.
want to do good. It's just that the setup and the environment is not structured in a way to enable them yet. And so what I see, and this is what I told my team, is like, we can do so many different things. I agree with you. Imagine a world where these multinational corporations with all of these well-intentioned people felt empowered and enabled to make a difference in the world. Like they
Mm.
could actually make the difference that they went to make in these companies. What would the world look like, right? A bunch of small startups can do so much, but some, if you want to make big leaps, we need to empower, enable these big corporate environments and influence them rather than beat them down with like a stick. Like, okay, how can we be a part of the solution? And that's what we're trying to be. We're trying to be a part of the solution.
You've done this since early age, right? Being part of the solution, always oriented towards that. That's really cool. And
Yeah.
actually, what would be a message maybe to aspiring entrepreneurs that are struggling, maybe, right, that are trying to find a way, maybe are trying to learn more on the strategic part of the thing. So how would you, what would you recommend? How would you empower them?
Don't be afraid to fail. That's the
Yeah.
first thing. Like, so we don't talk enough about failure in the in entrepreneurship,
Mhm.
especially in entrepreneurship. There's all these success stories, and for every success story there is nine stories of failure. I would actually say it's 9.9. It's 0.1 that succeed. Um, so don't be afraid to fail. No one, at the end of the day, no one is going to judge you for your failure. In fact,
Only yourself.
only ourselves. It's going to be but I know, having gone through this process many times. So we've talked about the big startups, but there was a lot of side startups that no one ever heard about, that I don't put on my LinkedIn, for
Yeah.
right? Because they never really existed in my mind.
Yeah.
And I also know the feeling that, yes, I'm afraid to fail. This still exists for me as well. I'm afraid to fail. Well, I've just learned to make my peace with it now,
Yeah.
with this feeling. But at the same time, there's a lot of relief once you're past that, right?
Yeah.
So that's like on shifting the pessimism into optimism. But now, like, from a strategy perspective, what I say is, learn fast, as quickly as you can. Don't commit to a big, like, if you're just starting, don't commit to like a big implementation right away. Have a big vision. It's important to have a big vision, but know that you're not going to achieve that big vision overnight. It's going to take time. Entrepreneurship and solving problems, complex problems especially, it takes time. There's no quick paths to success. It's slow, it's tedious, it's tiring, and hopefully you're working on something that is meaningful and that you care about. So that's what will give you power when it's like 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. or 4 a.m. in the morning, and you're still working, and you still have to start your day at 8 or 9 a.m., right? So it has to be something meaningful, and so it's slow. And the first step is finding, if you really care about the solution and money doesn't matter or commercial success doesn't matter, then it doesn't matter, right? Because you're going to get something out of it anyways. But if commercial success matters, then start small, test early.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, find out what your customers need, or users or customers, whatever beneficiaries need, because chances are you don't have it right the first time. It's going to take iterations.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how many iterations to find the right thing. We've done that. Like Impactor, we launched Impactor 5 months ago, but there was a launch before the launch, and there was a launch before that launch.
Yeah.
Going back to when we were selling an idea on prototype and just asking people, is this the right feature set? Would you pay for this? And what would you pay for? And so nowadays there's so many tools to start slow and get your ideas in front of customers and users, that we don't need to build a big solution to figure out whether or not you're on the right track, and figure that out as quickly as possible, because your energy matters a lot. Without
Yeah.
that energy, there's no other startup, there's no other business, there's no product, there's no team afterwards. So use your channel your energy strategically by learning quickly and learning always.
That's a great message to end today's chat. I want to thank you so much for accepting to have this chat with me today. It felt like 5 minutes, but it's been more than an hour. So thank you for your time. Thank you for this, for your story, for sharing your story. I'm sure we can talk about it for one more hour, but thank you for your time and for this, you know, honest opinions and honest ways of everything that you did so far. And I'm sure a lot of good things are ahead of you. So we look forward to hear more good news from your end.
Thank you so much, and thank you for bringing these stories out to the community. And I wish you all the best.
Thanks, Urooj, and thank you everyone for watching. We'll see each other next time. Take care. Bye bye.